looking for leaders. Those are leaders that we are cultivating.
Hello everyone, welcome to our first episode of the podcast Tilt Up Then, Now, and Next, a podcast about the evolution of Tilt Up construction and the leaders who shaped its way. I'm Nicole Vanesh, and joined with me today is Len Overbeek, current president of the Tilt Up Concrete Association. Len, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me on as your first guest, Nicole. It's an honor, and I'm looking forward to these podcasts that let the industry know more about who we are as an association. So thank you very much for having me on.
No problem. I'm glad you could join us. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in the Tilt Up construction?
Yeah, so I grew up around construction. My father was in the construction trades, and of course I was introduced to that at a very young age, and I've always loved to build things with my hands. Always loved to be innovative as well. And I got involved with Tilt Up construction in the early 2000s. We were having an issue with our concrete finisher at the time, concrete wall finishers, and I mentioned that to a salesperson that I had working for me, and he said, "Why don't you do Tilt Up construction?" And I said, "What's Tilt Up construction?" And he said, "It's where you pour the concrete flat on the ground and you tilt it into place." And I'm like, "Never heard of that before," and I sort of laughed. I said, I don't believe that. And then what I did is I reached out to my concrete salesperson. Al Van de Capel was his name. And I said, "Al, Tilt Up construction, have you ever heard about that?" And he started to chuckle. Said to me, "You're the first person in 25 years that has come to me about Tilt Up construction." And he sat there and we sat and talked about it, and he walked me through the Tilt Up process and how it works. I was quite skeptical. Even though I like trying a lot of new things, I'm like, it just doesn't make sense to me. About a week later, he calls me up. He says, "Len, I want to take you down to Michigan." He says, "I want to show you a Tilt Up project." And we did. We drove down to Michigan. I remember he wanted me to be there Thursday, Friday, and I said, "Hey, I can't do 2 days." Ended up going very early Friday morning. Showed up at my first Tilt Up construction site. Half the panels were standing, and they started lifting my first Tilt Up panel that I got to watch go up. It's 26-foot tall panel, solid concrete, 6 inches thick if I remember correctly, 2 reveal lines. Plain, Jane, simple Tilt Up building. Very typical of what you would call the big box where Tilt Up became known. And I loved it. I fell in love with it right there, and I thought, this is the way to build. And we came back to Ontario, and we started experimenting with it. And like I often say, when I got introduced to Tilt Up construction, Google was only about 6 months old, and there was no such thing as YouTube. And that was when we still had to learn hard things the hard way. You tried it, you experimented it with it, and sometimes it would fail, and you keep on going. But that's part of being innovative. So that's how I got introduced to the Tilt Up construction industry. The association, you asked me as well, how did I get involved with the Tilt Up Concrete Association? That happened through an engineer that I known at the time, and he was the engineer that actually designed my first tilt building for me. And he actually booked me into the first Tilt Up convention, which was down in Washington at the time, if I remember correctly. Arlington, maybe. It was Arlington. And he booked it, took me down there, and I remember him stressing, "You owe it to your industry to be involved with it." And he says, "You will never learn more than you ever will by attending association events." And we joined as a member in 2002 because of that, and we've been a proud member ever since. So.
Yep. That feeling you first get when you watched your first panel, do you still get that feeling today?
No, unfortunately I don't. Every time, I think probably for the first 30 buildings that I worked on, I would get a high. I would get a high as soon as I'd watch that first panel coming off the ground. You see, when I first started, I think our first panel was only about 60,000 pounds. Over the years, we've lifted some heavier panels, in the over 200,000 pounds, and you would get a rush when you see that concrete coming up off the ground. You see, 30, 40, 50, 60,000 pounds of concrete coming up at once. It gives you a rush. Unfortunately, I don't get that rush anymore. Maybe it's a good thing. I'm not sure I can handle it anymore with my heart, but it was a good rush always. Yeah, it was a good feeling. It was a sense of accomplishment. That being said, the first panel that came up, it split in two. So my rush was a total different rush that time. It was, what did I just get myself into? And I'm glad that I did another one after that, and that's what it's about, right?
Yeah.
So sense of accomplishment.
Yep. On your first few projects, what really were the challenges that you were faced with, and how did you overcome those challenges?
Ooh, that's some great questions. So, I'll go back to again. It was new for us. Even though we had worked with all the traditional building materials, which really Tiltup's made up of only really 3: concrete, rebar, and insulation. I'd worked with them all. Pouring them flat and tilting them up was something totally that we had not done. And it wasn't like I had anybody in Ontario that I could go to that had experience with it. So it wasn't, at the time I didn't know about Sean Hickey up in Ottawa. I didn't know about the guys on the West Coast or the East Coast of Canada that did it. And so my only help that I had was my concrete salesman who had experience at Tilt Up in the past, and Sean Van Rassel from Dayton Superior. So that was a challenge. It was a challenge, doing something new in a new marketplace without any industry support. I think that was my biggest challenge.
Yeah. So you had mentioned the challenge that you faced on your first panel, but it's splitting. What helped you get over that? What direction did your team do to get back on track?
It was an excellent learning opportunity, and I've always said you learn from your failures. There's no better teacher than mistakes. And actually, in a way, I'm very thankful that it was my first panel that split and not a panel, a couple of projects later. And really, how do we overcome that? We reached out to, my few contacts that I had in the industry. Sean Van Rassel from Dayton Superior, and he came down and showed us some of the things that were wrong, and you adjust on the fly, and you improve from it. So that's really what I want to say is the biggest takeaway from that one, learning opportunity.
You mentioned you became part of the Tilt Up Construction Association back in 2002. What really was your first experience with it, and when did you start to get more involved in the association?
So my first real experience, of course, was actually attending the convention, as I mentioned, in Arlington, Virginia, down by Washington. And if I think back to that first trade show and where our convention has come to today, there was maybe 15 tabletop booths, 100 people that maybe showed up, maybe a little more, maybe 120. I remember sitting through several presentations. What really intrigued me even then, was the capability of Tilt. We started, of course, in the agricultural world, plain, simple concrete buildings. And I remember at that first convention seeing, some schools even already back then, seeing some very neat industrial projects, some office buildings. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, I didn't realize you could do this. And that was my first real introduction to the capabilities of Tilt Construction and what it could do. And you know what? I remember being there and being like, wow, these people have done some amazing things, and they're willing to share their knowledge, and the ability to learn from what they were sharing was great.
For companies that are members but are not engaged, what really are they missing?
What are you missing if you're not an engaged member? The Tilt Up Concrete Association, I truly believe it's a collection of some amazing talent. It's the best tilt talent in the world. And when we get together as an association, it's a community that really grows and thrives off of sharing experience. Good, but also bad, right? We share our victories, we share our amazing projects, but we also sit there and share our failures, and we bring up the things that we do wrong. And I would say, not participating in that, not learning from others' mistakes, not sharing your own successes, not sharing your own failures, you're keeping yourself back, right? Go to the association, be involved with it, right? Join the conventions, see the great things that our suppliers are coming out with, see the amazing projects that our subs and general contractors and engineers and architects are involved with. Like that's really what I would say. You're missing out on a lot by not participating.
Yeah. What do you feel is the biggest benefit from being part of the Tilt Up Concrete Association? Is it the connections you make? Is it the lessons you learn? Is it the passion that gets reignited every time you go there? What really do you see as the biggest benefit for you?
For me personally,
Yeah.
my biggest benefit for me personally, you know what? It's the passion being reignited every time, the connections you get to make. I'm an introvert, and I want to say for the first, probably 5 conventions that I showed up, you stayed in the background, you didn't get involved. I didn't often ask questions. I would just simply learn by listening. And I remember, Ed Sauter coming up to me, I think, probably the 6th or 7th show that I was at, and introducing himself. And I'll never forget, part of me was sort of shocked that, he'd actually noticed me. Right? I'm thinking, wow, that this man actually noticed me. And, getting involved with the association that way. But, he really started to make me feel like, this is an industry that cares about you. And then, we struggled in Ontario when we first started. We struggled to get tilt projects. It was not new. We had a very strong precast market. And just every time you struggle for that next new building, and going down to the convention and seeing what was possible, and seeing, the different things that people were trying, not just in US, but around the world. It would ignite my passion being again, like, you know what, I've got another 12 months of this. I can do another 12 months of this. And that's really what would keep me going sometimes, because there's times I'm like, yeah, I'm done pushing the rock up the hill, right?
Yeah.
So it's the passion. And second to that is the connections. I've made some amazing connections over the years at the TCA association, and I would never want to give that up.
Yeah. You mentioned your connections. Who are really the key people that helped you get where you are today from the industry?
That's a great question, and to single out single individuals would be tough for me, because there's so many that have made an impact. And I just think of I think of several, I guess, that I really want to highlight. There are a few that I would really like to highlight. And one was my competitor, Sean Hickey from up in Ottawa. For years we competed against one another. And I remember the first time when I sat with Sean and had a real conversation, about our industry in Ontario. And I thought to myself, this is my competitor, and he's willing to share what he's doing to push the market. And he's willing to share what's not working for him. And I thought to myself, if my competitor's willing to do this, what is the rest of the association like? And you start to connect, with some of the other contractors that were pushing tilt in their industry. And, if I have to look back, right, Jim Beatty was very a key. Anytime I would have a technical question, Jim was always there. And I thank Jim for that, right? Always willing to pick up the phone for this guy up in, the Great White North, right, who was really a nobody, because that's who I was, right? I was just there as a, I'd show up once in a while. And his willingness to pick it up. I think of other industry leaders, and I think of suppliers, Dave Fillinger was always good for me. Man, that's a great question. And then there's others that have become personal friends. I think of guys like Tim Manarez, right? When I was going through some, heavy personal trials, willing to take that time at a convention to spend time with me. I have to think of guys in the industry who are constantly pushing, constantly sharing, like Barclay Giebel, right? Always willing to share his mistakes that he's made and has learned, what he's learned. Mitch, right? Mitch's leadership at the association is incredible, right? And how he keeps us laser focused and always striving to outdo, the next convention and make the conventions grow. Then there's other guys, right? Just a lot of down-to-earth people. Scott Bunny. Man, I could go on and on. Past presidents, Bob. I think of Rick. Karen Hand. Kim. There's so many. The list is just endless. And I guess what really has stuck out to me the whole time is that these, what I would call pillars of the association, were willing to take the time to talk to me, right? Willing to sit down with me and listen to my experience and share their knowledge with me, man, it would just be endless. And I could keep going, right?
Yep. When you joined the association, you said, you would sit in the back corner, and you obviously had a lot of people that would introduce you to new people. But what got you onto the board?
What got me onto the board? Mitch. I remember when Mitch approached me for the first time, probably 10 or 12 years ago. I can't quite remember the date or when. And I remember when Mitch asked me, I was taken aback. I'm like going, no, there's no value to me being on the board. You need people that, understand the industry, people that know what the challenges are, people that have the knowledge and the answers. And so I declined. I said, Mitch, I really appreciate the offer, but you got the wrong guy. When he asked me again several years ago, I'm not quite sure, maybe 6, 7, sometimes your memory blurs, not as young as you are anymore. But when he asked me again, I remember thinking to myself, this association has given you so much, right? They have allowed you to be who you are today. It's probably time for you to give back to the association, for you to be there to help mentor the next generation coming up, right? To share the wealth of knowledge that I had received from, I want to call them the first generation of tilt guys at the association. To receive that knowledge and now to be able to pass it on to what I would like to classify as the third generation of the Tilt Association, which is really the up and comers in the Tilt, those that are going through the mentor program. That's really what made me commit to it.
Yeah. And during your term of presidency, what really is your key focus?
That's a great question. Of course, being from Canada, right, we have representation at the board, but I would really like to see the awareness in Canada increase, the value of being a TCA member also to the Canadians. I would love to see that, an increase in Canadian membership. But I also think worldwide, the tilt-up concrete method is a method that is growing worldwide, not just in, North and South America, but the Middle East, Europe, parts of Europe. And I really think I would love to see more awareness of the association in other parts of the world. So that's really what I'd like to see happen over my tenure here as president.
Yeah. You've been around for a while in the tilt-up industry, and there's been a lot of challenges that the industry has faced. What do you feel is the key challenge we're facing right now?
Several. I really think several. We are constantly pushing boundaries as an industry. So larger panels, taller panels. It comes with its safety challenges. So making sure that we, as an association, stay on top of safety being key, right? Quality control being key. And then the other one is, as it becomes a more mainstay way of building, staying relevant. Right, making sure that the association still has a relevant voice in the industry, and that we not only are a collection of tilt contractors, but that we become the authority on it. That we are really the ones that are giving credibility to our industry and maintaining that. I think that would be some of the challenges that we are really going to face over the next several years as we continue to evolve.
Yep. You said some of the challenges are about, we're really pushing the boundaries. Just looking at that, what do you think is one of the projects that really has pushed the boundaries the furthest, do you feel?
In the Tilt-Up Concrete Association, or for me personally?
I would say first I'd like to hear for the Tilt-Up Concrete Association, and then I'd love to hear your project that's pushed the boundaries the most for your team.
Wow, that is a tough one. There have been some amazing tilt projects over the years. And which one has pushed the boundaries the most? Man. That's a tough one to think about. That's a real tough one to think about. I don't even know if I want to specifically call one out. I think of the church that was built with all the little clamshells in the East Coast. I think of that one. And you know what? You look back and you're like, it's actually simple. But it really pushed how... What I really like about that the most is it really showed how tilt can be a chameleon in construction. We can look like a construction method that's 200 years old and build it today. And I think, that's one that really sticks out for me.
Yep.
Yeah, there's some other great projects. Man, I don't know what else I would single out.
Yeah.
For myself personally, of course, my own home.
Yeah.
I really have to say for myself, building my own home was a project that I really think catapulted us. Some other ones that really stick out is Muskoka Bay, 6-story tilt project where we built the floors and the walls, a single floor at a time. But that one really pushed for us. Man, another one that put us on the map up here, which is just a regular building, but was the big Amazon warehouse, right? A 2.4 million square foot Amazon warehouse for us, and having that thing built in 12 months, start to finish, was I think that really gave us credibility up here in Ontario.
Yeah. What excites you the most about the industry right now?
What excites me the most? I think it's just how we as an industry are continually pushing forward. Whether it's in different building materials and architectural capabilities, but we're continually pushing forward. I think that I have to say that's probably what continues to excite me. We aren't stagnant. As an industry, we are not stagnant. We are constantly trying to go forward with the next innovative idea, right? So that's what excites me the most.
Seeing that continual change, growth
100%.
in the industry.
100%. The sky's the limit, and I think as equipment gets bigger, as experience grows across the industry, we just continuously are opening up new doors for what we can do as an industry.
Yeah. Yeah, especially now you look, they're stacking the panels, so you can do the higher residential projects.
Yep.
The composite panels. What was really your most memorable convention that you've been to from the TCA?
So my most memorable convention, that's a great question. There's been a lot of great conventions, and I'll get to that in a second, which would be my most memorable. But my most memorable moments, I want to share them for a moment. One would be when, in 2018, I stood on the stage with my brother down in Texas and received the Contractor of the Year award. We were only the second company to ever receive that, and that for me was an incredible moment, a moment I probably won't forget. So that was very memorable for me. The other one that I really want to say was last year's convention, when we were able to participate in the mock-up medley. That was a great event. It really brought out the competitive nature of each of us. As an association, we are a close-knit group some days, and to see how we could have that friendly competition, that was great. That was really great. When I think of conventions, actual convention, I would have to probably say Atlanta. Atlanta was good. The award ceremony was held in the aquarium. It was all around just a really, really good convention. That's probably the one that sticks out the most for me.
Yep. Yeah, at the mock-up medley, that was definitely amazing to see what everybody brought. But I think even the key thing that sticks out to me is that at the end of the day, we were all helping each other to clean up our setups. It wasn't like everybody was taking care of their own, no matter who the winner was. We were all there late at night cleaning up everybody's together. And it was just great to see that competition, that was so fierce there, but so friendly that everybody wants to stick around and help the other person clean up theirs. That was great to see that too.
Yeah, I believe that. Barkley better be glad I wasn't there for cleanup. I would have had a jackhammer with me.
Where do you see the tilt-up industry going in the future?
Where do I see the tilt-up industry going in the future? Wow. I see us constantly, as I mentioned earlier, pushing the boundaries. And I really see us as an association growing to truly being a worldwide body that is the authority on tilt-up construction. If I think of many different trades or building methods around the world, they each have their own unique geographical entities. And I think the Tilt-Up Concrete Association has that unique opportunity of being that worldwide authority because of how adaptable Tilt Up Construction is. You're not limited geographically to a certain part of the world. The challenges we face in one area are pretty much similar around the world. The 3 traditional building materials that we use, they're available around the world. So I think we really have that, opportunity to really grow our international presence, and that's really where I'm looking forward to the industry growing. And then, on a personal note, I see the industry growing forward with how we are starting to train, our young people. The Tilt group is an amazing group, the under 40 group there. And the mentorship program that has been introduced because of that. And I really see us setting ourselves up for success of the next set of leaders coming in. We won't be looking for leaders. Those are leaders that we are cultivating internally. And I think that is a key to the strength of our association, that our members are willing to put the time and energy into young people to become leaders for us as a group. So I think that gives us a strong, we're setting ourselves up for success, is what we're doing. So
for sure. For a company getting into Tilt Up Construction, what advice would you give them?
What advice would I give somebody that joining Tilt Up Construction or getting into Tilt Up Construction? You owe it to yourself to be a member of the association. You know what? Really, if I see what it costs you to be a member and what you're going to get out of it, it's invaluable. There's and you know what? And the cost is it's so minimal to join. Really, what it takes is effort on your part to participate. To not join an association that has so many answers and that you're going to face. I say get involved with the association, become a member, attend the conventions, go on the tours, participate as much as possible, and contribute back. Right, when you have learned an experience, share it with the association. We have a tech hotline, which is a great place. It's a great resource, a great place to get answers, but to ask questions as well.
Yeah, on that tech hotline, that's a great place for people to bring up the problems that they're having during the year instead of saving everything for the convention. Right? It's a year-round thing. It's not a once a year. We have other conventions that we are part of the TCA, like the Future Think. So it's really great that they have given the opportunity that you can submit questions or problems to everybody at their times during the year.
Yep, for sure. It's you know what, and I think we have to thank Mitch for that one, if I remember correctly. And setting that up was, that's such an incredible resource for us to use.
For sure. Finally, what piece of advice would you give to the next generation of Tilt Up leaders?
What piece of advice would I give to the next generation of Tilt Up leaders? Well, seeing as I believe you're one of them, I would suggest that you continue participating. Participate in the resources that we give you guys. I think that is such an incredible testament to who the association is. By setting up the YP group, by setting up the Tilt group, giving you guys the opportunity to learn in a structured environment from those that have gone before you, right? And from those that have gone before me even, right? I just think of how Sean participates, at his level, right? And there's others, right? And I think that's just an opportunity for you as young leaders. Continue to surround yourself, continue to participate in the association and learn from the leaders that have gone before you.
For sure. Well, thanks for that advice. And thanks so much for being on today's episode. And thanks to everybody that watched this episode. We appreciate your support. Have a great day.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Nicole.
No problem.